Namaste, namaste, and good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. We'll get started. Today we are going to continue with chapter 8. Bhagavad-Gita, the essence of Upanishads, can be classified as a knowledge scripture, a scripture that is out and out rooted in the knowledge of the ultimate knowledge of the self. So, if you look at it, the first 6 chapters dealing with the Karmavada is about the knowledge of action or the knowledge of work. So understanding the knowledge, that knowledge related to action or work is going to take you a long way towards connecting with selflessness and selfless attitudes and selfless motivations, and also to integrate your inherent aptitudes that the infinite has bestowed on us. Now, from chapter 7 onwards to 12 is the knowledge about devotion. Knowledge about devotion. So what do you exactly mean by devotion, and what are the nuts and bolts level elements of devotion as exemplified in these chapters. In fact, it helps to raise your awareness about the inner power that we all have, and connect it with the infinitude. And then to get a level of love and devotion to that power of self within. So it is about the knowledge of devotion. So knowledge of karma or action and the knowledge of devotion or bhakti are the 2 aspects initially discussed through the first 12 chapters. And then finally, we will, from chapter 13 to 18, we'll be looking about the knowledge about knowledge. So knowledge about knowledge is the meta-knowledge. And that is basically the last segment of Bhagavad-Gita, which we will be seeing from chapter 13 onwards. So you can see that the knowledge of devotion is the central piece of this scripture. And you can see that the chapters 7, 8, and 9 are filled with practical aspects of this knowledge of devotion that you can actually call it as the most vibrant areas of the scripture. That is basically what we have been looking at. Chapter 7 discussed how universal you are. All the universe itself is you. Then chapter 8 is looking at the imperishable nature, the Akshara Brahman of the nature, imperishable Brahman, Akshara Brahman, the imperishable nature of your infinite power. So in practical terms, the imperishability of the self that is within you actually deals with the kind of imperishable legacy that you can leave behind when you are confined within this perishable frame of human body, the mind and the intellect. So that is the practical aspect of Gita. So we are looking at it from that practical aspect, and that is why we have termed it as the Gita intelligence, the intelligence that you bring forth into this life of yours in all the interactions in your life, the transactions in your life, and exhibit the wisdom of Bhagavad-Gita in every aspect of your thinking and translation of thought into action. That is thinking, articulation, and expression. So all your thoughts and all your articulation of your thoughts into the physical plane, and then, of course, the expression of those actions. This thinking, articulation, and expression of the power of thoughts using this self, the infinite self, is basically the notation that we have taken up for Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism, which is the symbol of Om. The symbol of Om, constituted of the 3 phonemes, A, U, and Ma, represent this, the power of thought, which is actually the universality, the power of articulation, translating that into kind of expressible action plans, and then expression, the real expression of it. So if we look at the karma, bhakti, and the jnana segments of the Bhagavad-Gita scripture. You can also actually translate that into a, uma in the reverse order, M, U, and A. M, which is about the expression, which is karma. U, which is about the articulation, which is the devotional aspect of it. And then the thought thinking part of it, which will constitute the knowledge of knowledge or the meta knowledge. So with that, now we will start off with the second part of 8th chapter that we stopped at. From that point we'll start, but before that we will look at what we looked at in the last week. The 8th chapter started with the 7 clarifications that Arjuna wanted, and Krishna explained each of them in just about 2 verses, very cryptically, the meaning of which is, the terms are Brahman, Adhyatma, Karma, Adhibodha, Adhideva, Adhyajna, and how the self expresses. So it is in definition, as a brief definition, he gave out these principles. I am the imperishable infinite. The self within us is the imperishable infinite. And my nature, that self's nature is Adhyatma. That is Atman. And the noble, innovative, uplifting, sustainable actions that we perform in this world is karma. That is karma. And what is Adhibodha? The imperishable body composed of the elements is Adhibodha. All that is perishable. Sorry, not the imperishable, imperishable. All that is perishable is Adhibodha. Then the self enlivens all that we all think and do, create our worlds and lords over it. So that is the power of Adhideva or Ishvara. My attitudes of sacrifice reflects the infinitude. And when I start thinking in terms of sacrifices and reflect that, thinking in terms of sacrifices, articulating those sacrifices and expressing those sacrifices in the world of action, that sacrifice is the Adhyajna. That is my real Swarupa, Swabhava, Adhyajna. So as the sacrifice residing within each one of us is Adhyajna. And when the self expresses through this sacrifices, it manifests the power of self, manifestation of self exiting our body. When our thoughts are focused on the self, will be the expression of Brahman, the infinite. So that's basically, in summary. I will explain that once more with a few sentences here summarizing it. So these are 3 slokas verses. First 3 verses, 3, 4, and 5. Verses 3, 4, and 5 describe this. And in a practical sense, this is about identifying with imperishability. This is how you really understand your imperishable nature. Everyone's imperishable nature is exhibited through these 3 verses. Okay, what is it? Again, repeating it. The self is imperishable infinite. Every one of us, our self is the imperishable infinite. Self as the indweller is our true nature, Atman. What I do, expelling all negativities, that is noble and uplifting. This is called Karma Yoga. So everything, I completely shun negativities, limited thinking, circumscribed thinking, and rise up to be noble and uplifting, not only for yourself, but also for everything around you. Then that action becomes Karma Yoga. That is the translation of self into Karma Yoga. All that is composed of the elements, physical elements, Panchabhutas, are constantly changing, and therefore it is perishable. They are unreal. They do not exist in all 3 planes of time: the past, the present, and the future. So these perishable entities, with which our physical being is composed of, is perishable. The self as indweller within us, each one of us, enlivens my thoughts that create my world and lords over it. So it is that power, enlivening power, that actually makes me think, actually translates my thoughts, articulates it in a form that can be expressed in the outside world. And therefore, that self within me lords over all my actions. Sacrifice is the direct reflection of the infinite. So when I do actions in selflessness, that is a direct reflection of the actual embodiment of, the self, which is sacrifice. Embodiment of self is sacrifice. Self is an attitude of sacrifice. When self leaves my body, thus it manifests as selflessness. So this is how we actually become imperishable. Our work, thoughts in selflessness, articulation of selflessness into expressions of sacrifices. That is what karma yoga is. That is what personification of selflessness means in this physical world. And this process is proving that when we actually exist in a mentality of sacrifice and starts working with this universal infinite attitude, then we become the self, the infinite self, the imperishable self. So whatever we do is actually in consonance with the swabhava of the infinite, or the nature of infinite, which is imperishable. Therefore, our actions become imperishable. Therefore, we leave behind a legacy that is everlasting. So you can see, when we actually reach that infinitude, we become imperishable. But in the physical sense, in the material world, in the physical real world, we know that that is a state which is, many of us will think that it is impossible. True. But we can strive constantly to reach that state of imperishability. How? By actually becoming more and more selfless. You can increase the amount of selflessness within your thinking and articulation and action. It is not in one stroke, you cannot become selfless overnight. So you keep striving from small acts of selflessness to encompass more and more people, and ultimately, keep on rising towards, in your life, towards your end. That way, you can see a lot of changes happening around you, and the legacy that you build up will start expanding. And the sphere of influence of your selflessness, if you can keep on increasing, if you can keep on increasing the radius of the sphere of your influence in terms of selflessness, you can see you are expanding. You can expanding from your family. You can expand from your personal body, mind, and intellect. You can expand from your family sphere. You can expand from your community sphere. You can expand from your social sphere. You can expand from your national sphere. You can expand into a global sphere. So that's the level of increase of these implications of your sphere of influence. So that is how we keep practicing this knowledge in real life. In fact, in professions also, you can start doing this. How you do it in practical means is basically the core of today's discussions. Most of it I am going to emphasize on that, and I will look at some. We will look at some practical examples, and you will see. You will definitely get a gist of how this can be applied in your daily living, more specifically in your in daily interactions in the outside world. So in life as well, in living, life as well as in living meaning in your professions, in your daily interactions in the outside world. We'll be looking at more of those practical aspects today. So then, after this definition, a few other verses till up to 8:12, the summary is like this: thoughts set on the self results in action that will bring you joys of the self. Thoughts fully focused on the self, and when the self expresses through that mind, then what results will be actions that will give you happiness that is unbounded, joys of the self. Our actions follow our thoughts. So focus your body, mind, and intellect on the self and realize the joys of the self, is what Bhagwan advises Arjuna. Focus and practice are required. You have to focus your mind and you have to keep practicing. to reach that splendorous state of the self, the state of Bhagavan. Identifying with the self helps thus to realize our infinite potential. So that's, in summary, how you actually can identify with the imperishability. And what is required for that? That is basically dealt with in the next 5 verses, 8:11 to 8:16. Mindset needed is defined as, you should be self-controlled, mind control, senses control, and the intellect control. Free from selfish passions. You have to get rid of selfishness, even though gradually. And be austere in life. That is, lead a life of tapas. What is that austerity? We have seen that previously in action, karma, but we will also see some other examples today. So, mindset needed is self-control, free from selfish passions, and austere in life. The process, how do you do that? By the process of bringing in your thought, thinking to the joys of the self, articulating that through translating into action plans. So that practicality is required, which we will see in practical examples today. And finally, how do you actually express that in the action plane? So it is about, living in awe, the essence of our religious aspects, as a symbol Om. What is symbol Om? Chanting symbol Om means living a life of thought, articulation, and expression, which is in tune with the infinite. So that is Om, because Om itself is the personification of the infinite. And therefore, be focused, be regular, and be persistent. 3 things: focus, regularity, and persistence are the 3 things that are required, because that is how we can make changes within ourselves. That is how we make fundamental architectural changes within our mind, so that we actually live in tune with this. So that is where we actually stopped last week. So how do we actually develop this mindset that is required for sustainability or imperishability? And how do you actually translate this process into action plan? By being focused, regular, and persistent. For this, the first thing that is required is to tap that infinite power within us as a force from within. A force from within. It is not about getting attracted to outside glitters and then trying to do something. It is about the inner force, and that is called as the power of self-effort. And that power of self-effort actually implies what it is something that you need to really look at, that implication, how to create situations, relationships, and objects in the outside world in tune with this element of sacrifice or infinitude. By focusing, attending to, visualizing, and directing our energies through thoughts. So this is basically what self-effort is. So everyone talks about putting in self-effort. What do you mean by self-effort? In definition terms, it is about, the self-effort is about how to create situations, relationships, and objects in tune with our aspirations. Our aspirations here, Bhagavad-Gita teaches us, is to be in tune with the infinitude, is to sync with the true swabhava of human beings, which is sacrifice. And how? By focusing, attending to, visualizing, and directing energy through thoughts. So this is basically the process of self-effort. So that actually, before going further, let us try to understand this self-effort in terms of these mindsets and processes that are required for you to make any changes, whether it be in material plane or it is in spiritual plane. Of course, we are now looking at it in the plane of the wisdom of Gita intelligence, whereby we are trying to see how we can tap ourselves into the joys of the self, in constantly thinking about the self, articulating the power of self, and then expressing the power of self through us. So when we have to do that, we need to tap these universal powers and then convert it into the infinitude, which is basically what it is. Universal powers, which are probably limited, not infinitude. But then we have a mind that can actually expand that into infinity. So that is basically what the whole process is. So let's try to understand self-effort. Self-effort, as I just now defined, is it implies a conscious effort that we make to open opportunities at the right time and right place. So you can translate that even in daily life. Just think about that. What do you mean by self-effort? It implies a conscious effort it is a conscious effort. You are tapping your consciousness into an effort. That is self-effort. So in simple terms, you can say tapping our consciousness into an action plan. That is self-effort. And we know that life is not something that happens by destiny. It is one that we create by what we think and do. And for that, even now, the modern neuroscience actually talks about that processes. It talks about the law of attraction. It says that the modern brain science says that the law of attraction is the heart of our inner powers. And what does it mean? It describes the way we create situations. When we create situations, we attract opportunities to us. We attract relationships, and we attract objects, goals, and we attract wisdom. It is all a direct consequence of the way we think. So that is the reason why in the beginning part, Krishna says in this chapter that what we think, we do. So it is our thoughts that guide us. We manifest our thoughts into expressions by focusing our attention on what we really want to do, visualizing them, and directing our energy towards them through our thoughts and thereby actions. This process of attention, visualization, and directing of the energy within us is what is called as self-effort. That's the fundamental definition of self-effort. And this is basically what Krishna talked about in verses 5 to 8:11 in terms of the requirements for it. I am going to look at it in a practical sense now. This power of self-effort is the wealth of human capacity. It is action. It is action. And it is not just intention. It is action rather than intention. Intention is not enough. Intention is not self-effort. When we translate the intention into action, then only it becomes self-effort. It is the purposeful connection between intention and action. So that is basically, we're going to look at it in terms of the mindsets required and the processes. So in practical sense. So there is first thing that is required. There are 6 aspects which I'm going to display here. One by one, we'll take a look at it. The first and the foremost requirement for you to put in self-effort is to have the prasada bhava, which is what is called in modern science as the abundant mindset, as against the lack mindset. So abundant mindset is required. And what do you really mean by abundant mindset is, letting go of your past beliefs and embracing positive changes. So that is creativity actually. Creativity is about letting go of past in terms of your inhibitions and failures and lack of confidence, etc., and embracing positive changes so that you make a fundamental change in your thing. So you should have that positivity within you. You should believe that I am worth it because I am infinite. I am not limited. I may have failed now, but I have the power within me to rise above and conquer this situation. I am worth it. Believe in that. And also, start believing that failure is, what do you mean by failure? Failure is not yet the moment. It only means that you have not yet reached that goal. That's all. You did something, but you did not get the result. So you have not yet done. That's all. Failure is only that. It is not a complete failure. So having this kind of mental attitude is what is called as abundant mindset. This is positivity. You try to apply this in every aspect of your living. Every aspect of your living, in workplaces, at home, etc. And try to cultivate this abundant mindset. By try to increase this abundant mindset, the degree of abundance within your mind, by checking and constantly fine-tuning your approach to situations and action and life in general. Okay, so that is abundant mindset. If you cannot put in self-effort, if this component is not there, if you are negatively inclined, you will not put self-effort. That's the truth. So first and foremost is abundant mindset. Cultivate that. Cultivating abundant mindset. The second one is alignment of goals and intentions. You may have set goals with some intents. You have to, set your make it aligned. So your intention should match the goals, and then articulate that intention to the goal. So intention to goal and articulation of it is home, life of home, living in home. Okay, when you say living in home, you should also specialize the fact that I'm not doing that regularly, because this intention to action is all about being selfless, bringing in infinitude. You can be selfish and you can actually create havoc in this society and world. For that also you need intention and goal alignment. We are not talking about that. We are talking about intention and goal alignment in terms of selfless existence in this world. And that is the whole essence of Bhagavad-Gita. So we are not talking about negativity. So alignment of goals and intentions. For that, you need to selectively make attention, in the sense that, there are lots of options. You have to selective. And what do you want? You have to focus on that. Selective attention. Attenting on what is really required. That selective attention is basically what we obtained through the process of dhyana. Meditation, meditative flow, state of flow, mindfulness in living. Mindfulness in living. That is the action plan that we require. And that action plan was covered in chapter 6 of the Karma Kanda. Selective attention. And that is mindful living. Matching intention with action. And intention with a goal, if we have to align, we need to actually start working in terms of our intentions. And there is a process there is a process that the brain conducts in terms of your selective attention and trying to match your goal intentions to actions. It is called as value tagging. I will look at it a little bit more, even though not in very much detail, subsequently a couple of slides later. That value tagging is about the value that you give to the various options in your life and the choices that you make based on what value system it is. That is what. Now, these values, we are talking about selfless values, and the selfless values need to be given the importance, and you have to analyze the situation. I'll come to that now. So, abundant mindset and alignment of goals with intentions is the second attitude. If you do not align your goals with your intentions, then you will not put appropriate self-effort in that direction. The third is inspiration, the force of motivations, the desire for the joys of the self. That is what is written there. Desire for the joys of the self. A kind of optimism and positive appetite. That is your anticipation of the joys. The anticipation of the joy when you achieve something, and the anticipation of the joy of actually experiencing. We looked at that also in terms of how the happiness of Satchidananda, Ananda, the bliss, translate into physical plane. So it is actually the intensity of your desire, the magnetic desire for the joys of the self is basically what it is. That is why it is called as inspiration. The magnetic desire for the joys of the self. It is not mere desire. It is magnetic desire for the joys of the self. That completely against selfishness. You have to visualize that and anticipate the joys of the self. Visualizing and anticipating. That is why the process of attraction requires visualization and anticipation. And that is mentioned in the definition. So visualize and anticipate the joys of the self. Whenever you are engaged in action, think about the joys of the self that will accrue to you by doing your job excellently, very well, and with selfless motivations. The results that can accrue to you. We have seen in karma, action plan, how selfless actions powered by equanimity and equipoise and powered by the prasada bhava, abundant mindset, can actually result in results that are much more larger than selfish desires. And for that, that is why karma defined attitudes of yajna, tyaga, samarpana, prasada bhavas. And of all, and also the fine-tuning of your thoughts into creative, productive, and enriching of Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya, and then practicing to create dexterity in your actions, that of dexterity of action, Shudra. So all these aptitudes, dexterity of action is an aptitude, creativity is an aptitude, productivity is an aptitude, and enrichment is an aptitude. So creativity, productivity, enrichment, and dexterity of skills are the 4 fundamental aptitudes of a human being. Whatever be the material aptitudes that we talk about, of musical aptitude, aptitude in mathematics, aptitude in sciences, aptitude in economics, aptitude in accounting, or whatever, all those the aptitudes are leaf level aptitudes that we see. But Bhagavad-Gita and the Upanishads define the fundamental set of attitudes that will drive any of these leaves. That is basically what we discuss here. That is the reason why the scripture of Bhagavad-Gita is as relevant today as it was 5,000 or 3,000 years back. Because Bhagavad-Gita was not talking about superficial things. It was talking about deeper things, deeper abstract things. So the abstract you go, the more life you get. So you can see it is infinite. Its impact is infinite. Its range is infinite. And its timeline is infinite. As long as human beings are there, these things will be valid. And then the 4th is, of course, patience. Patience is required for you to put in self-effort. If you don't have patience, you will get distracted very soon and disillusioned very fast. To be patient, you need to be open and you need to be flexible. You should not stick to your only plan A, plan B, plan C. You will start thinking in plan A, plan B, plan C. Flexibility. And also openness that, yes, if I fail here, I will go there and I will change my plans, change my fundamental attack itself, and then go forward. And you will be persistent and you will be consistent with your efforts. So that means you have a total trust in yourself to bring forth changes. You put in effort based on that trust that you have within your own capabilities to make the effect. And a fundamental component of this patience is what is in modern terms is called as critical mass in your thought. What do you mean by critical mass? It is that, you have, when you actually start putting in effort and actions and in whatever you are engaged in, there is a point up to which you may actually not see any results. You should not give up. There is at some point is when things will start giving way and you will start seeing results. The point at which that happens is what is called as the critical mass. So you should have the patience to do that. If you don't have the patience to reach up to the critical mass, you will never see light on the other side. So be patient and be focused and do your work consistently and persistently. And then the 5th is harmony. Harmony about intuition and, modern science talks about harmony as what you call as, a kind of dovetailing of intuition and interoception. Intuition is something that is beyond the normal levels of, you can call it as some sort of gut feelings that you have. and interoception are actually the feelings that you get from within your body. Within your, it is not the gut feelings that I am talking about. There are other things. For example, in certain situations, for example, when let's say, I'm going to give a very simple example, and then you can think about further things that can happen or even read about. Suppose you are, you are going to do something adharmic, something wrong. Most times, if you are a very conscientious person, your heartbeat will start pumping faster. Heart will start pumping faster, and you can see a perceptible increase in heartbeats. Is one thing that can happen. And that, you can feel that. And when you feel that, you should take action for that. That is interoception. Similar things like that is sometimes, interoception also implies the kind of rise in temperature within your body. It's you feel minor changes in temperature, you can feel. Sometimes when you start getting feverish, you will feel that. In fact, even the physical well-being is controlled by your capability of interoception. So bringing in that, all this into your thoughts and actions is basically what is called as harmony. So dharma versus adharma, ethics versus non-ethics, etc. All those things imply a lot of reactions within your body. So, and you should have the trust in judging that, trusting the judgment. This trusting judgment is basically what is, because of this integration is what is harmony. And so it is about the body, mind, and intellect in harmony with the self. BMI in harmony with the self. That's what it is. What is it? What does it mean in practical terms? This is basically what we are discussing. And then the sixth is the universal connection. That also is another driver for self-effort. The universal connection is basically what our Karma Yoga also talked about in terms of Yajna, Tyaga, Samarpana, Prasada Bhavas, the attitudes. Those should be your driving forces. You connect with the infinitude. You connect with the universal values of coexistence and expansion. That is what is called as universal connection. It is about love and trust and compassion and all the dharmas, human dharmas that we talk about. Satyam, Dharmam, Shanti, Premam, Ahimsa, and such value systems. They are all, there to help you. If you are fired by Satya, Dharma, Shanti, Prema, and Ahimsa, that means you will put in effort in the right directions. The power. If you are not bothered about those things, that is when your self-effort is going to be dampened. So it is about a combination of these six factors combining together to create the unleashing of the inner powers as self-effort. So in summary, I will describe that. These definitions I will be giving in the notes. Forcing the mind to be positive, to help manifest the universal potential that we all have. Forcing the mind to be positive, to help manifest this power of self. That is one. Self-effort. That is self-effort. Another aspect of self-effort is forcing the mind to be intrinsically motivated to manifest the joys of the self. Here we are talking about manifestation, expression, not just thoughts. It is not just about inner articulations. It is about manifesting it. Forcing the mind to be intrinsically motivated to manifest the joys of the self in actions. That is self-effort. Then shutting out unwanted distractions to manifest our intentions. Our intentions, goal, aligned, everything is done. But shut out the distractions. Dukkha Samyoga Viyogam, action plan, Karma Yoga. 6th chapter, we talked about that. Dukkha Samyoga Viyogam. Shutting out unwanted distractions to manifest our intentions. Patience, what is it? It means forcing the mind to be flexible, persistent, and trusting to manifest the positive changes. Harmony, what is it? Trusting your body, your feelings, and the judgment, BMI, to manifest the right thoughts and deeds. And universal connections. Employing the right attitudes and supreme motivations to manifest the enrichment of your thoughts. So this is manifestation of self. This is how you actually translate the infinite, which is available to you as the Ishvara, universe, through your mind and exiting your body as the infinite, the power of self itself. So thoughts, translation into expressions. So manifesting the self, the practical method of manifesting self implies self-effort, and self-effort implies combining these 6 aspects of self-effort into our daily action plans, actions. So it is actually, it will be a good exercise to put these 6 definitions right in front of you in your work places, at home, somewhere you can visit as visible, a large poster or something, and daily seeing it. So every day when you are confronted with a challenge and you are now shirking your responsibilities or trying to run away from it, and you are not feeling up to your challenges, feeling down and out, look at this and think about that infinitude that is reverberating within you and making you to start thinking. Even the negative thoughts that you have is because of that. But make sure that that negative thought is a result of your mind playing tricks on you. So, put in self-effort. Be positive and start looking at it. The first step is being positive. That's why we started with being positive, abundant mindset. Okay, so this is manifesting the self. This is how you manifest the self. That is required for your karma yoga, which we discussed in the first 6 chapters. Okay, so if you have understood that, we are going to now go forward into something slightly philosophical, but let's look at this. There is this infinitude, infinite, the Brahman, and we all know that the infinite was there at all times. It was not, there was no time when it was not there, neither will there be a time when it will not be there. Infinite. No birth, no death. Not bound, it is unbounded, and it is infinite, the infinite. Its true nature is existence, infinite existence. Its true nature is infinite knowledge, and its true nature is infinite happiness. It is all about knowledge, existence, knowledge, and bliss. Sat Chit Ananda. That infinite is everything.
Okay.
And it expressed as the universe. And the universe is also therefore contained within this infinitude, because infinitude is everything. The universe emerged. Science says a big bang, and the universe emerged with particulate matter and energy. So the infinitude is unmanifested. Infinitude is unmanifested. And our Vedas talk about Brahman willed, infinite willed. The willpower of the infinite created the universe. Is basically what? How it is picturized in the Vedas. Rig Veda starts off with that kind of slogan. So, Brahman willed and the universe resulted within itself. Just like, just imagine I am the infinitude, individual. I am the infinitude, and if something has to happen within me, the mind has to now start thinking, I have to have the willpower and then act, do something, create something in this world, actions in the world. So I have to have the willpower. If I have the willpower, I will create that. So that willpower is the spark of self-effort within us. So infinity is unmanifested, but the universe is manifested. How did the universe come about? The universe came about from the willpower of the infinite. That is how it is. So that in the macrocosm. Now in the microcosm that we all are, the infinite within me expresses through my thoughts, the self-effort or the willpower, the self-effort, and then in creating actions in the outside world. I, infinite I exist, and actions, all my actions within me itself. The actions create my world. Actions create my world. So everything around me, the whole world that I see and interact with and enjoy or suffer is created by my willpower. It is within me itself. The physical body is just the center of that creation. That's all. Similarly, the universe is just the center of creation of this whole universe. Which is that, and there are a lot of elements within it, and the unmanifested became manifested. So that, and whatever is manifested is not lasting; it will perish. I create a glue stick. This glue stick is not going to be permanent. It is definitely, it is made of material, Adi Buddha, and it will perish. But the thoughts that created, the powers that created the thoughts, and then the design, and then finally this articulation, that power is infinite. Okay, so think about the unmanifested and the manifested. The universe is manifested, the infinite Brahman is unmanifested. It's not, we cannot perceive it, we cannot see it, we cannot feel it, we cannot think about it. But we can start thinking about it, we can start feeling it in the universe. Okay, so that's the general picture. Now look at it. The infinite, think carefully. The infinite is the seat of everything. Everything that is possible. Now in the material plane, as a kind of motivating thought, think about it. Anything is possible. It is there within me. Anything is possible implies that everything is possible. As far as I am concerned, I can do anything. So think about some skill set, knowledge, or capability that you do not have at this point in time. That means, it doesn't mean that you do not have it. It is there within you, but you have not manifested it. It is in the unmanifested state. How do you manifest your capabilities, skills, or knowledge? That is not yet manifested. That is what we are talking about. That requirement is, for that is self-effort. I don't know whether you can see that in the screen, because it will be small letters. That is self-effort. Self-effort within the unmanifested framework. Put in self-effort. And now, depending on whether, okay, if anxiety and despair of the mind is ruling you, anxiety, despair of the mind, doubts, etc., is running your mind, what happens is self-effort is completely camouflaged. And in terms of, let's say, instead of anxiety and despair, let's say you are run by anticipation and hope. Anticipation and hope. That is abundant mindset, which I am talking about. Your effort will be manifested in terms of realizing your goals. It is like the whole thing is like oceans surfacing, so waves surfacing from the ocean and going back into the ocean itself. But it produces an effect initially when you put in self-effort. The waves come out. Otherwise, there is no waves. Everything is dissolved into the ocean itself. Your desire, you don't put any self-effort, what happens? That desire simply dissolves into the unmanifested within you. So that is how Krishna describes all this, in terms of the unmanifested eternal that is within us. Unmanifested eternal is within us. Unmanifested infinitude is within us. How Krishna describes it in this poetic fashion. Those who, and then, what happens is those who run after created glories, material benefits only, selfish benefits, are subject to hope and despair. But those who go after the joys of the self will never be, because your joys, your despair, hope and despair is all because of your selfish anticipation of personal glories. Those who realize what hope and despair are, hope and despair both are of the unmanifested. Hope brings in changes, whereas despair simply dissolves into the unmanifested. 870. Those who realize hope and despair are, they know very well that both are equally transient, and so they know everything. If you can understand that this, then you have understood the self. That, things that you want, but you are not putting self-effort is also within you. The moment you put in self-effort, it will produce a wave. And that is how you realize it, manifest it. In times of hope and positive efforts, the unmanifested springs forth as waves, just like waves. And at times of despair and negativity, dissolve into what is termed as the unmanifested, which is there within us. The multitude of beings, therefore, everything, whatever we create and whatever situations that arise, comes forth in hope as waves, and it dissolves into the unmanifested in moments of despair. Or you can also, in general, you can say the multitude of beings come forth in life and into the unmanifested at death. That is the highest form of philosophy, which if you understand, life and death itself is that situation, and that life and death itself is hope and despair. In hope, you have life. In despair, you are equivalent to death. But there is that state. Now we should understand that beyond this unmanifested state, even beyond this state, there is something. The state in which that is higher than even the unmanifested. And that is infinitude. That is the imperishable Brahman. That is what lasts. That is the imperishable Brahman. This is the philosophy of Akshara Brahman. This is the supreme state, the state of everything, not even unmanifested, beyond even the unmanifested. Those who realize this supreme state of the self, those who really understands and connect with this supreme state of the self, will never fall prey for hope and despair. That is what Krishna promises. Birth and death. You will be beyond birth and death. So in practical terms, it is all about understanding this and existing in the material plane, in the physical plane, in the world of transactions that you create, by understanding that I am the seat of infinitude, and that seat of infinitude is right within me as unmanifested. In the universe, there has to be manifested and unmanifested aspects. So unmanifested. Now, I can make the unmanifested manifest in the outside world through self-effort. And that self-effort, when that manifestation is completely in tune with coexistence and expansion, in tune with global goals, in tune with sacrifice, the element of sacrifice, the concept of sacrifice, of selflessness, that is when I reach out to infinitude in this manifested world, in the world of living. So, just manifested wave comes in through self-effort in terms of anticipation and hope. In terms of anticipation and hope, it rises out. Otherwise, in anxiety and despair, it just, you may have creative thoughts, but if you are running by anxiety, despair, doubts, then your creative thoughts will simply lie within you as unmanifested. You have, we always say, some people, he is brilliant or she is brilliant, we say, but nothing comes out. Why? Because self-effort is not there. It just stays unmanifested. Because why is somebody not putting self-effort? Because of lack of, confidence, hope, lack of hope. It is all because of despair. And it will go against the self-effort aspects that we looked at. And then what happens is it just dissolves into the unmanifested. Otherwise, it comes out as a wave of action plans, actions. Okay, that is just to explain that philosophy. I took so much time. Now let us look at Okay, I know that this is a kind of knowledge that is jam packed into few slogas in the Bhagavad in the 8th chapter. In 7th, 8th, and 9th chapters are not very big, but they are like the you see this temple fireworks, and in temple fireworks the pyrotechnics, it starts slowly, and then suddenly picks up the crescendo into the final few minutes or few seconds, it just explodes in all directions and everywhere. It is like this whole of Bhagavad Gita, I would say, from one chapter 1 to 6, the slow building up of momentum, and then 7th, 8th, and 9th are like the final cracking of the pyrotechnical display, the knowledge reaching its crescent, and then of course it will calm down with after that, typically after that comes the light displays and other things, which is 10th and 11th chapters. So we are right in the middle of the crescendo of knowledge, 7th, 8th, and 9th. Next chapter is also part of this. So you may feel that there is tremendous amount of knowledge here in terms of even practical applications. So that is definitely that is the reason why I have also thought of posting the videos as well as the notes, so you can actually look at it in detail a little bit more and then start thinking. It is not something that you can possibly absorb in just a single 1.5 hours of talk. So anyway, now again, I'm connecting this with the modern knowledge in terms of the current understanding of the brain. Let us look at this. We will look at it as what we want as aims and goals. And just terminology only. Aims are selfish. Goals are higher level. That is all. I'm just using two words. Aim and goal does not mean that way, but for our logical and analytics, we'll use the term aim as selfish goals and goal as supreme goal. So these are the two extremes of situations. So on the spectrum, choice of the self lies closer to that infinite goal or the supreme goal, choice of the self. And aim, closer to aim lies power, pelf, and prestige. Those things. So all our innovation, creativity, all our productivity and enrichment in terms of progress. This is what drives us. Innovation, productivity, and progress through the use of dexterity. Okay, that is basically what of action. So you can use this innovation, productivity, progress, and the dexterity of skills for power, pelf, and prestige, getting your hand on selfish aims. But you can also use innovation, productivity, progress, and the dexterity of skills geared towards the self. That is where Bhagavad Gita talks about your mind being focused on the self, joys of the self, to reach the supreme goals. Either way. So that is a scale. There is a scale. This is not, watertight compartments of aims and goals. But it is all about, a spectrum of, all these things. From here to here, it's a scale. So when you are completely powered by power, pelf, and prestige in terms of selfish aims, despair, disastrous results accrue. And when you are powered by supreme goals, joys of the self and supreme goals, the results will definitely be excellent. So a scale of from disaster to excellence, of despair, anxiety, and negativity to a state of hope, anticipation, and positivity is basically the spectrum of emotions that we can go through based on how you set your goals. In between, at the middle is the situation of doubt, tentativeness, and vacillation. Neither here nor there kind of situation. So this is how, in general, everybody exists. Now, what is above this is the abundant mindset, and what is below is the lack mindset, where these are actually characterized by abundant mindset is characterized by positive thinking, generosity, self-esteem, confidence, infectious nature, generative attitudes. Whereas the lack mindset is about negative thinking, fear, self-deprecation, doubts, a tendency to shrink away from obstacles, retreating to comfort zones, and avoiding risk, resisting changes. So if you can see what kind of behavior actually you exhibit in terms of meeting challenges. Is it the top one? Is it the bottom one? So that is something which we need to take a look at. Typically, it is the negative thinking that drives majority of human beings, because that is the default selection the brain attempts. Safety, survival. Safety, survival is the mode. Flight and fear, flight mode, So when we are meeting challenges or faced with challenges or difficulties, etc., the normal tendency is to adopt survival mode. That is how the brain works. But what is really required is to put in self-effort. For what? To do what we need to do and not what we need to avoid. What should we do? That should be the prime factor, not what should we avoid. So needing to do should be our driving force. This is the essential element for progress. That is how human brains evolve. That is how human beings evolve. That is how we tap our infinitude. For that, we need actually to have selective attention to what we need to do and not what we need to avoid. Selectively look at what we need to do. And not succumb to your default mode of action, which is flight or the mode of survival. Selective attention. And this selective attention is actually controlled by that part of the brain, the thalamus, part of the limbic system. It actually helps in doing a selective filtering. Okay, I'm not going into the neuroscience of it, but thalamus is the part of the limbic system, a part of the limbic system of the brain that helps you to do the selective filtering in terms of value tagging. The brain value tags. What is the extreme ends? Logical and emotional ends. And this logical value or emotional value, actually both logical and emotional actually fluctuate. It's a pendulum between aversion and attraction. Like, this is why Gita says likes and dislikes should be avoided. So we have to focus on what is driving you. What is your priorities? Is it avoiding shame, avoiding criticism, or gaining success, is in the physical successes, material gains, etc., or fulfillment and joys of the self? This value tagging is something that can actually develop within your mind through practice, deliberate practice. By being fully conscious of the self and all your goals being fired by that full consciousness of the self, by making a universal connection to this karma yoga principles that we talked about, so that you can build a resilient, compassionate, and integrated personality. So that process is called as, the practice is called as karma yoga, making that universal connection through actions. And through the process of magnetic desire for the joys of the self, that is bhakti. That karma, you become a karma yogi by becoming a bhakti yogi first. Magnetic desire for the conscious, the self, by creating an harmony between the BMI and global values. We are trying to tap in all those elements of self-effort also into this. And this is how modern science, neuroscience describes the way our human brain works, and it can be directed. Okay, so this is, if you have got a global picture of it, is basically what I wanted. And how you actually learning this wisdom of the Gita is now going to make changes within you. How to do that, and what science is telling us about these changes that takes place in ingraining the value systems within your brain. Okay. I will post this infographic for you to think and reflect later on. But at the moment, we'll move forward. So Krishna says in 8, then after that, when this hope and despair prevails, what happens? In those times of hope and in those times of despair, what happens is basically what is described here in a very symbolic manner. When thinking is focused on the joys of the self, that is when we have light. That is when we have light. Applying the strength of skills, the strength of knowledge, and the strength of righteousness within us, dharma, which constitute the path of progress. So, what is the path of progress? The path of progress is when the path of progress is when the thinking is focused on the joys of the self as your supreme motivation, inspiration, the impetus within you to think and act. In applying your skills, in applying your knowledge and your value systems. The path of progress. That is path of progress. Analogously referred to as the northward path or the northern solstice or the path of ascendancy. Uttarayana. That is called as Uttarayana. While thinking of the pleasures of the body, mind, and intellect, applying physical strengths and unrighteousness or selfishness, which constitute the path of downward spiral. The power of self expressing through despair and hope, one after the other, leading to limited success. That is southward progress. Dakshinayana, of darkness, lunar light of smoke, night time and dark fortnight represents this path of southward movement of deep progress. That is Dakshinayana. And the first one, the path of fire, the path of light, the path of daytime, the bright for night. This is the northward progress. So it is described as the Uttarayana and the Dakshinayana. The path of light deriving the joys of the self and the path of darkness deriving the joys of the body, mind, and intellect are the two eternal paths. These paths were there right from time immemorial. The moment this universe formed, Uttarayana and Dakshinayana became manifested. And people now have the choice to select either one of these paths. If one understands these two paths very well, one will never be bewildered in life, disillusioned in life, deluded in life. So be steadfast in the joys of the self. Krishna's advice. So the time of fire and light, fire of productive physical capabilities, the devas within you, that can be translated into real actions. The actions that our body makes, that is the fire. The light, the power of our thoughts, that actually enlivens our thinking. And sun, that is the real, actual source of thought. Consciousness powered by intellect. Light is the power of thinking. And fire is the productive physical capability. So the path that is fired by fire, light, and sun, Uttarayana. And that is fired by smoke, darkness, and moon. Moon is the reflected light, reflected consciousness, the mind. Darkness, ignorance of evil and lethargy, evil, and smoke of doubt and hesitation, and clouded nature of your thinking. That is selfishness-based creative productivity in general terms, and the other one is values-based creative productivity, Uttarayana and Dakshinayana. So values-based creative productivity is the path of progress or the time of progress. When you are engaged in value-based creative productivity, Bhuda Bhavotbhavakara Visargaha. When you are engaged in that, that is when there is light. The light of fire, light and of consciousness, the sun. The selfishness-based creative productivity is when you are entangled in doubts, hesitation, ignorance, lethargy, and emotions, undue emotions of the mind. So these two paths are described in 823 to 827. And finally, in 828, perfection of sustainability is described. What can be achieved through knowledge, Veda, right attitudes to cooperative work, Yajna, conservation of energy and effort, Tapas, and a sense of sharing, charity, and beyond can be perfected by someone who realizes the imperishable nature of the self within. So whatever you can achieve through knowledge, whatever you can achieve through work, whatever you can achieve through tapas, austerities, and whatever you can achieve through charity can be attained, and much more than that, beyond even that, if you are focused on the joys of the self. That if your mind is focused, set on the self. Vedeshu, yajneshu, tabassu, chaiva, dhaneshu. Knowledge, attitudes, austerity, and charity are the foursome sources of merit that we can aim to possess to gain success. But when these merits are directed by the joys of the self as the motivator, we transcend the limits of all imposed limitations and rise to the level of supreme infinite excellence that is imperishable. We become true reflectors of the imperishable self. That is the message. Ultimately, the summary of all this is that if we can actually direct all your knowledge, all your right attitudes, all your disciplines and austerities that you take in life, and charity to the joys of the self, nothing else. Why do you want to do charity? I want to get publicity. Go on. You're doing good, fine. But if you actually give away your selfish desire to get publicity and then do charity for the sake of charity, then you are touching self. Why do you do all these austerities? Because I want to defeat my competitor. You are limited. You are limiting yourself to the austerities that will produce your capabilities are limited to just defeating your arch rival. But instead, if you take away that and then be fired by the joys of the self, then you can not only defeat your competitor, but you will go even much beyond that, is basically what it says. Attitudes, your attitudes. If you can do something selfishly, you will gain results. But if you can completely empower your action through yajna bhava, then what you get will be much more than what you can get in the other way. So that is what it says. You can actually you want to gain knowledge to show off your knowledge or whatever, you can still gain knowledge. But when that motivation is replaced by the motivation for understanding the infinitude within yourself, the ultimate knowledge, and you are happy in actually making incremental changes to your knowledge and gaining happiness out of it, then the knowledge that you will gain, even in the material plane, will be much more than what you can if you limit yourself to perishable goals. So, imperishable goal of the knowledge, the happiness of knowledge, the imperishable goal of the selflessness of the attitude, and the imperishable goal of the unlimitedness of the austerities, the capabilities that austerities can produce, and the unlimited happiness that you can derive out of providing charity by not pegging it to physical rewards. That is when you are reaching imperishability. That is the meaning of this. That is what this chapter was talking about. That is how you reach imperishability. So, yes, this is all very good, but how can we actually start practicing this in daily life, other than the mere sentences that I talked about, knowledge, attitudes, and austerities, and charity being directed towards higher things? Let us look at that. I'll spend a few minutes on the practicality of this in our daily work-a-day world. So that is what I'm going to spend a few minutes on. Next, we will take about some examples. Okay. For example, taking initiatives. We all talk about taking initiatives to succeed in the workplace. So what do you mean by taking initiatives? In the imperishable manner, by infusing the wisdom of Gita intelligence. The initiatives are not just what goes above and beyond what is expected of you, or boldness, but they go a long way. What should be that initiative? It is not about you just rising above and beyond what is required, or the boldness, or taking the risks, etc. You may have to do that, but then they are not fired by those things, but by the motivation to add value to the team, to the organization, to the society. In growing terms, you can start doing that. Initially, you may start in local terms, and then you will start expanding. Is followed through to fruition, and following it through to fruition. Not just taking the initial initiative and dropping off, but complying to keep at it, peg at it, keeping the momentum and going forward. And you are also ready to take risks. So that is how you actually can infuse the higher level goals into your taking initiatives. That higher level infusion of energy into initiatives, putting self-effort in tune with the joys of the self, the global goals, larger goals, is basically what we are talking about. That will bring in more than merely taking initiatives. So at workplaces and all, you can start thinking, how can I add value to the team? Initially limited way. You are a 4-member, you are in a 4-member team, and you are doing your work. A is doing your work, B is doing your work, C is doing your work, and you are also doing your work. Don't just keep doing that day in and day out. You will not make any progress. Start thinking in terms of what more value that I can bring to the team as a whole, not just me. Okay, me finishing my work to the best of my abilities and in quality and of being utility to the team through my work is fine. But if you can, after doing all that very well, start thinking of larger, the team. How can I actually mold, fill up the areas that the team requires to do, is something that you should start thinking from day one. In every stage of your profession, you can do that. And you can see results coming in faster than you expect. You are not looking at the results, but the results will come. You should be also able to take risks for that, etc. That is initiative taking in value. And then slowly the organization, after some time, you can actually start thinking about the larger organizational goals and start working towards that instead of just the team's goals. You may be, taking initiatives to actually make your team interact with another team. Or you initially take personal initiatives and then start, your interaction between teams, interaction between departments, interaction between different project teams, interaction between different product teams, interacting with the customers, the clients, the users. And then also, larger, depending on where you are developing a product and the product is used for flood mitigation, let's say. Then you go out in the society and find out the effects of flood and the various scope that can be increased, and start filtering that out from the real requirements for the upliftment of the society, bring it back into the society, to the team, to the product, to the team, etc., to the organization, to the product, and to the team. You actually have to work that way as you grow. The team, the organization, the product, the society. Again, getting back from society to the product, to the organization, to the product, to the team, etc. It should be kind of breathing between these levels, different levels, always going up and down. That is taking initiatives with the larger goals. No personal goal. Again, I'm not actually being fired by what gains I will get, what promotions I will get, what raises I will get, the power that I will be able to yield. No, it is not that. Those things will automatically come. Irrespective of whether you ask for it or not, if you do this, that will automatically come. This is a experience that you have to actually go through, and then you will start getting more and more confident about this knowledge of the imperishable. Choosing the next is choosing the right networks, your linkages, cultivating and maintaining the right networks, not the grapevine, the office gossip and things like that. Is about building pathways to knowledge experts. You may be working in some technologies or knowledge that may not be familiar with you, or you are not an expert or fully competent. Then you should actually keep learning. And to keep learning, you need to connect with the right sources who can connect us to the self of the course, of the knowledge. I mean, the core of your, what you call as it is not really just the bottom line, but it is, I will call as the self of any organization, the self of any project, the self of any product. You have to identify with that. It is also about sharing and caring. Networking is also about sharing, giving your knowledge free to your colleagues who really work together, and also caring for others, the team, the organization, etc. Exhibiting that. Right networking also enables reducing knowledge deficits. Your knowledge deficits can be reduced, and that can amplify your output. This is again going beyond, above and beyond, and expanding out for larger goals. You may actually be also able to expand the scope of projects, the scope of products, the scope of the organization, the scope of your interaction with the customers and clients, etc. Next is managing self, managing your whole self. It's not just about work or life, work-life balance, etc. This is about internalizing your experiences. How can you internalize your experiences? You learn every day. You are learning at the workplace itself. When you learn, how can you actually internalize it is a question that many people do not follow. The only 10 to 15% of the people really internalize their experiences. So there are various ways of internalizing experiences by keeping track of what you learn, and you can use creative methods to do that. You can use manual methods. You can use technology. In the current world, there are lots of tools available to record your experiences and learn from it, constantly looking at it, recognizing opportunities where there appears none. You may sometimes feel that, there is no progress to be made here. There is no progress to be made in solving an issue, etc. Don't try to look out. Try to take initiatives. Choose the right networks and try to recognize opportunities that come by, because you are creating opportunities by taking initiatives, and you are creating more opportunities by networking. And then you will start getting things which you have to start recognizing opportunities from. Being proactive in directing your choices. You have to be, you should be an agenda setter, not an agenda follower. Taking the right initiatives as above, and above all, building and carving out a path of legacy that is sustainable legacy in the way you work, sustainable legacy in things that you do, sustainable legacy in expanding the knowledge base of the place that you work, sustainable in expanding the scope of the project, the scope of the product, etc. That is managing your whole self. That is how you self-manage. You become a leader even if you are not a leader. Of course, when you are a leader, you can amplify those. Then the other one is courageous conscience. There is another capability which is called as courageous conscience that is very valuable and has been found to be extremely powerful in terms of making you successful in thought-powered workplaces. A courageous follower. You start off normally as a follower. Follower means I'm not talking about this sheep kind of followers. Follower in the professional sense. There is, I don't know how many of you are aware of, I'm sure everybody is aware of leadership. But more and more, lesser and lesser number of people are aware of followership. Followership is also a powerful strategy that is required in the beginning stages, especially. I will call it simply as self-leadership. So, that follower, if you want to really become a powerful follower, the characteristics that are required, mindset that is required is called as courageous conscience. The ability to judge the paths of good versus the paths of pleasure. Path of good and path of pleasure. You have the ability to understand which is good, which is pleasurable, which is easy, which is really required. And sticking to the path of good. To possess for that you need to have the power of strength, the willpower. To possess the strength of fortitude to make affirmative action towards what I believe is right is the power of courageous conscience. It's like, and I don't know whether I've told you a story of Prahlada in the Bhagavad-Gita, Prahlada or Narasimhavadar. Story is actually doing that. It is illustrating the power of courageous conscience. It is about, the power of good and the power of pleasant. The path of good and pleasant is a differentiating capability of the brain. Viveka buddhi. To identify what is right, what is pleasure. Viveka buddhi. But that has to be combined with another power, which is your willpower, the power of self-effort, strength of the animal strength to stick to the path of good and not take to the path of pleasure. Because knowing that smoking is bad is not enough. You have to stop smoking. Stop touching it. So that is vairagya, or also the dispassionate power within us to put in the effort to stick to the other, the good one. So this human capability of viveka and the animalistic strength of willpower, when they combine together, is when actually you rise to the level of sustainable success and happiness. So you just look at the story now. The power of man combined with the lion power of will. Nara and Simha combining together to produce success to a state of happiness and sustainable success. Prahlada, Ahlada, perennial happiness, Prahlada, to that state. So if you wanted to raise yourself to the level of perennial success and sustainability and imperishability, then you need to have the firepower of lion and the human capability of viveka together with the Narasimha within you. So that moment you are faced with challenges and you fail, let the Narasimha avatar take place within us and bring out the Prahlada as successful. That is in a very nutshell, that story. More details, we can work out like the Puranjanova canon, but okay, so courageous conscience. This courageous conscience is also defined in the knowledge, the knowledge of about knowledge. That is the third part, chapter 16. Krishna defines this characteristics of courageous conscience in 3 words, 3 phrases. Abhayam Tattva Samshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavasthiti is considered as the divine quality that each one of us should possess. We will come to that when we touch upon 16th chapter. Abhayam, fearlessness. Tattva Samshuddhi, the purity of conceptual knowledge, and the purity of thinking, actually. Tattva Samshuddhi, purity of thinking, and Jnana Yoga Vyavasthiti. You are sticking to knowledge, the path of knowledge. Fearlessness, purity of thinking, and the wisdom of knowledge. Abhayam, Tattva Samshuddhi, Jnana Yoga Vyavasthiti. If we can combine these 3 things in our professions, in the daily workaday world, fearlessness about taking risks and making decisions and sticking to the path of what is right, required. Purity of thinking, focused, selectively filtered out thought processes based in knowledge. Thinking. Purity of thinking is about your thought processes based in knowledge of the right ways to do things. Quality is a paramount, and precision and accuracy are very much important there. And then the wisdom of knowledge. Why do you use this? Value systems that needs to be used. Jnana Yoga Vyavasthuti. When you do this, when we combine this and we are powered only by that, we are a courageously conscious person, courageously conscientious personality. Okay, then, so that those are fundamental things. And then there is teamwork, for example. How can you actually bring forth the knowledge of imperishability in teamwork? Teamwork is all about joint ownership. So teamwork is not just people coming together and working together. It's not that is superficial way of looking at teamwork for maybe doing some whatever it is. But it is all about, there are various aspects to it. Teamwork is all about joint ownership. Everybody taking ownership of the whole thing, not just their own work. Positive group dynamics. Some simple things like, if suppose as a team you are working, somebody is slagging and you have finished your work, you will go out and help. You will not wait for the others to finish, thinking that it is not by duty. So it is about group dynamics, pulling together people. Some people may not like some part of the work that they are doing, and therefore, quality suffers and you may need to help, or those kind of group dynamics. And some there may be conflicts within members, etc. You trying your part to actually actually navigate the contradictions and things like that. Combining multiple perspectives, not just being one-dimensional, taking self-leadership, taking, you think like the leader, you think like the whole team. And above all, lack of selfishness. All this put together is real teamwork. So you can actually, in teamwork definitions, you can incorporate these value systems and redefine teamwork in your organizations. And then, start talking about it, the various elements of teamwork. Then the other is leadership. In leadership itself, there is what is called as the knowledge quotient. There is one element which is called as the knowledge quotient. So I'm looking at that now, because I'm now looking at the knowledge factor only in this case of the knowledge factor. Knowledge quotient plays a significant role in employing expertise and influence to convince a group of people to come together and accomplish a substantial task. It is a show of the power of, it is not a show of the power of ego. It is not about, egoistic leadership. It is about bringing in knowledge into your transactions. That's the knowledge quotient in leadership. So you have to, it is about transcending the limits of gross knowledge and then going above and beyond that to become, what do you call as a blender of subtle knowledge also. There is another characteristic called as creative dissonance. The ability to be able to trigger seemingly unconnected conceptual and practical knowledge by some kind of sensory or abstract inputs. This is the way you connect with a certain thing. Like, for example, you may actually be, let's say, looking at, you may be seeing in the evening, you're actually down with some issues at work, domain-specific issues, not people-related and things like that, or some specific issues, and then you are seeing a movie in the night, relaxing. And suddenly something in the movie triggered some thoughts and you are able to solve your nagging difficulties at work. Now, being open to this hours of inner subconscious level brain activities. How do you do that? Through practice and consistency. That is what Krishna said. Persistence and consistency taps these powers. The ability to be able to trigger seemingly unconnected, dissonant knowledge and experiences by some kind of sensory or abstract. It could be sensory while you're seeing, or sometimes it may be abstract also, thought level. You deeply think about it and go to sleep, and the next day morning when you get up, suddenly, you have the solution. You might have experienced this. Definitely, everybody experiences this kind of things. Is the power of analogical thinking that is at the root of creativity. This is called as the power of analogical thinking that is at the root of creativity, and this is called as creative dissonance. This is how you actually rise above, by actually having higher goals set and tapping the universal. Then developing the right perspectives ability to look at issues and solutions with the multiple perspectives of sustainability, inclusion, and enrichment. And having the foresight to expect the unexpected, as well as making judgments for mitigating risks is based on sound knowledge that is unselfish. So, I mean, this is how you actually transcend your knowledge factor to higher levels and you gain better results. This is the practical aspects of imperishability that I'm talking about. It is not from a spiritual angle, but from a spiritually materialistic angle. You can call it as a spiritually materialistic life. Sustainable successes, leaving behind a lasting legacy on the sands of time. And then transcending the limitations of your attitudes. How? So knowledge over now attitudes, practical elements. Again, taking initiatives. Take the initiative itself. How do you actually transcend the limitations of the attitude factor? Initiatives are to be rooted in common goods and goals. Common goods and goals. Cooperation and making sacrifices become element of that. Yajna and Tyaga Bhavas. And must be followed through till logical conclusion. You have to stick to it and do it. Dedication, Samarpana Bhava. Results must be taken with a sense of positivity. Results, whatever comes, must be with positivity and shared with others in the team, etc. Prasada Bhava. Developing good etiquettes in networking. The attitude factor, transcending the attitude factor. Proactively giving, that is sacrifice. Proactively giving. Don't wait for get help before you start helping others, but start helping others. Whenever you are in difficulty, help will automatically come. That is the way. Otherwise, you'll have to beg around. Proactively giving should be the driving factor of building networks and not taking only, giving initially. And must follow and respect etiquettes. You should also be etiquette driven. Cooperation and dedication, sacrifice, etc. are elements of that. And if you do put in that, you will transcend the limitations of networking. Sense of duty. To do what is required and not just what you want. Sacrifices, dedication, etc. are required. Then the other aspect is about being a systems thinker and a team player. Systems thinking. Our view is not the only view. That is what it is. Our view is not the only view. Have that stick in your mind. We are all system players, team players. Cooperation, sacrifice, dedication. These attitudes go a long way in making you a systems thinker. Followership. How can you excel in followership? Even as a systems player, we must exercise independent, critical judgment of goals and tasks. Critical, independent judgment. Whether just doing what the leader says is not enough. Goals, tasks, and methodologies must be able to work cooperatively within a team. You work cooperatively within a team. At the same time, you also exercise independent, critical judgment of goals and tasks and methods. Or as a leader to accomplish, or work with the leader to accomplish common goals. That is followership. Again, you are transcending followership to a higher level. Then egoless leader, selfless leader. Leadership. This is aspect of leadership. Must transcend personal whims and fancies, sacrificing personal whims and fancies, and being inspired and inspirer. Inspired by the team as well as, inspiring the team as well as working in an inspired manner. That is dedication at the utmost level. So, and then, just like the knowledge factor quotient that we talked about leadership, there is what is also called as a momentum quotient in leadership. That is an attitude. Ability to keep pace of work and be a facilitator par excellence. As a leader, let's say you are a leader, keeping the momentum quotient is about actually keeping track of everyone's work, at the same time not intruding upon it, but motivating them to keep keep up a momentum such that deadlines and other kinds of targets are met in a proactive manner. Whenever difficulties come, they are caught early, and therefore delays are avoided. And whenever people slag, additional resources or impetus is given so that everyone it is about moving forward, keeping the momentum moving forward, keeping the work moving forward. That is momentum. So that is transcending the limitations of attitude factor, applying these higher value systems. Then, of course, the transcending the limitations of our austerity factor, the disciplines of the physical body, health wise and other things, I mean, even keeping your brain healthy, drinking water, at least 1 liter of water per 30 kilograms of your body is a must for the brain. 1 liter of water for every 30 kilograms of your body. Think whether you are drinking that much water at whatever age you are in. Healthy diet, physical exercises, oxygenation, cleanliness, and energy mapping. Find your best productive times and do the toughest and the most important work at that time. Find your lowest energy levels and do your easy and routine works at that time. Try to work out a discipline like that. Conservation of mental energies now. Eliminating regrets of the past. Getting rid of agitations of the present and avoiding anxieties about the future. 3, chapter 30, verse number 30. Controlling the intellect now. The physical body, the mind, and now the intellect. Shunning arrogance. Egoless followership, egoless leadership. Choosing the good against the pleasant. Being able to do that differentiation and sticking to the path of good. And austerity factor, therefore, the austerity factor helps in maintaining physical, mental, and intellectual health, recognizing your energy patterns, optimizing your networks through knowledge, taking the right initiatives, and controlling ego at the door of leadership. Becoming a small L leader, that is what the modern terminology is. Capital leader is ego, small L leader. And charity. A charitable attitude helps in making you a systems thinker, thinking in terms of the whole rather than the parts. Empathetic, having multiple perspectives and seeing others' points of view. And ultimately, there is one more thing, which is charitable attitude will help you to become the go-to man with a reputation of helping others in terms of knowledge, skills, etc. You are charitable. Therefore, people will come to you. You in the organization, you will be considered as a go-to man. If anybody has any problems, go to him or her. That is, that kind of an aura if you create. I mean, you cannot just create a false aura. If you are really into that only, you will be able to get and sustain that kind of a position. Become a leader with a people's quotient. So people quotient is another aspect of leadership. So in leadership, we have seen 3 factors: the knowledge factor, knowledge quotient, momentum quotient, and the people quotient. 3 things: knowledge, momentum, and people quotient are 3 important things that small L leaders cultivate and transcend the limitations. Okay, so that's basically what practically, the elements of practicability of the knowledge of the imperishable or imperishable self within us. So this chapter we talked about initially of the terms Brahman, Adhyatmam, and Aksharam, Akshara Brahman. And through karma, the universe was formed, the Adidevam, the universe, Ishvara, loading over everything in this universe, universal self. And again, through karma, in the life within us, that karma came to us as sacrifice. Within us, each one of us, the Brahman is now actually available within us as Yajna Bhava, Yajnam, Adi Yajna. And this is basically, this Adhyatma is through which we rise up the levels to infinity. Adibhudam is the perishable ones, the mind, body, etc., intellect are all created by Panchabhutas. And our actions in the material plane based on sacrifices and elevating, rejecting the lower is called as karma. And adhibhudam, composed of sattva, rajas, and tamogunas, knowledge, passion, and ignorance or lethargy or knowledge deficits. And we can use the sattva, rajas, tamogunas in the right manner with sattvic content. Knowledge, sacrifices, austerity, and charity can be elevated. Before that, if we are actually succumbing to these sattva, rajas, and tamo gunas, then creativity, productivity, and destruction results. And that is sattva, dakshinayana. But when we are powered by sattvic forces, the northward bright phase of our life begins. That phase is the real thought, articulation, and expression of the power of self, the Om in our life. So the way it is represented, 8:1 to 8:4 in the 8th chapter, the first 4 verses, and then the next verses 5 to 10 talks about this. How you actually, the Adhibhudam represents within our life. And the Om is mentioned in 8:11 and 8:15, how you articulate, think, articulate, and express imperishability through the, and we also understood the unmanifested in terms of despair. 8:16 to 8:21 talks about the unmanifested and the manifestations of the power of self within us, and the path of light and the path of darkness, and that's basically that is the way to transcend the limitations of knowledge, sacrifice, and austerity. And that brings us to the end of this chapter, and we will chant the mantra of completion, and then we will go to discussions.